All right, good morning and welcome back to another Read Aloud of Hero. You'll notice that the setting has changed a little bit. Well, as it gets a little warmer, sitting by the fire with a blanket is proving to be more and more difficult. So now, with the beautiful weather here, I want to make a little more comfortable read aloud. Diego's going to join us on the couch. We've still got access to our favorite animals and, most importantly, our beverage. And we have an air conditioning vent right here. Let's dive into chapter 9 and see what happens. You ready, Diego? Don't look too excited. Good boy. All right. If Alba or Kate knew he'd left the apartment that night, neither one of them ever mentioned it. Can I help you? Lay down. Get comfy. We're in for a long, bumpy ride, sir. Aww. I know, he misses his armchair. It's not as comfortable as the couch. And Zach certainly wasn't going to bring it up, especially not to Kate. He wasn't going to tell her that he'd not only gone in there alone, he'd gotten in the middle of a mugging or managed to scare off the mugger or whatever it was that he was doing. But whatever he had done, it had felt amazing. When he'd finally gotten into bed that night, it had taken him what felt like hours to get to sleep. That was how excited he was, how amped he was. Like he hadn't just faced down his own fears. He'd finally put a face to the bads and started to put them down. Looked them in the eye and chased them off for once. He had to admit, he didn't think about going back the next night. Oh, he did think about going back the next night and the night after that. But he stayed in the apartment, kept himself busy at his computer. One time, he even made it as far as the elevator, feeling those feelings coming up again like a bad mood rising. Before he heard his mom, back from her trip by then, say, "Going somewhere?" Standing there between the foyer and the living room. Zach was quick enough on his feet to say, "I had a crucial next question for Lenny," but then I remembered, like a dope, that he's already gone home. "How about you go back upstairs and focus on some school questions," his mom had said. So maybe that B in history becomes an A, like it ought to be. She went back into the living room, and Zach followed her, watched her grab her book off the coffee table and settle into the couch. "But what if the B is happy being a B," he said. "What if it turns out that it was an overachieving C before it shocked the world by becoming that B?" She gave him one of those mother of all sights kind of sighs. "Be gone," she said, pointing up the stairs. "What if that's one B that's making all the other Bs in the world really proud," he said. "Go." He went upstairs and worked on history for a while. When he was done, he went out on the balcony and stared out at the park, wishing his mom hadn't caught him before he could sneak out again. He thought about going back on his computer, but he wasn't in the mood to be researching his dad tonight, reading about him instead of talking to him. He was missing him way too much. That never stopped. That was something he couldn't let go of. The way he couldn't let go of his suspicious, his belief. The accident wasn't actually an accident. There were times when he wanted to talk about it with somebody, with his mom or Kate or somebody who wouldn't look at him cross-eyed when he opened up about the stuff, but he hadn't come up with anything beyond his own conspiracy theory. No proof. And the one time he had run it by Kate, she'd acted like she pitied him. Poor, sad, deluded Zach Harriman. As much as Kate parades loved being right. As much as Kate parades loves being right, she was dead wrong about the crash that killed his dad. And one of these days, Zach was going to prove it. And there was no way she understood him and his feelings because Zach wasn't close to understanding them himself. What he did understand on nights like this, clear as the lights in front of him, his dad was never coming home. Zach would sit out on the balcony, and for a few minutes he would think this was like all the other missing dad nights in his life. For a few minutes he would feel exactly the way he used to when his dad was away, and trick himself into thinking that he was coming back next week. But then a much worse feeling would come in right behind it, like he'd been sucker punched, and he'd remember all over again. His dad had promised to take him to the Knicks game soon, and over Christmas break, he had promised they'd go skiing, just the two of them, up in Vermont. All those promises and more would never come true now, so that was the emptiest feeling of all. It was why what should have been good memories now felt like bad ones. because they hurt too much. When his dad used to surprise him and come back early from a trip, no email, no call, no warning, there he'd be, waiting in front of the building when Zach got home from practice, opening the door with a flourish like he was Lenny the doorman, and whatever age Zach Harriman was at the time, he'd drop his backpack like it was a bad habit and hug his father for all he was worth. It was as if his dad had some kind of sixth sense, would know exactly when Zach was walking home from Parker, the precise moment when he'd be coming down the street, like there was this weird radar between them. And the next morning, without fail, no matter how jet-lagged his dad should have been, no matter where he'd flown in from, he'd walk Zach and Kate to school, saying at the front door of Parker, "See you after school, kiddo." "Swear?" Zach would say. "One more honor than a whole Boy Scout troop," his dad would say. "Oh, on more honor than a whole Boy Scout troop," his dad would say. Before he'd add, "Where else would I be?" Though they both knew the answer to that one, the correct answer was he could end up almost anywhere, at any moment's notice. There hadn't been any notice when his dad was finally taken away from him forever, when he was just gone. The way the old Zach Harriman was gone for good, the one who never wanted to fight back. His dad used to go off and save the world. Lately, his son just wanted to beat it up. And there's a pause there. Man, I feel like this is a pretty common reaction to a trauma like that, where you get angry. I hope Zach figures out how to harness that anger into something good. Spence Warren wasn't in love with the idea of having Zach Harriman as a teammate on the 8th grade basketball team at Parker School. But then Spence wasn't in love with the idea of Zach sharing the same oxygen he breathed either. Spence played center for Parker, not because he was all that much taller than the rest of them, but because he was the strongest guy they had. He was also the best athlete on the team, and he had a center's mentality. As much of a total jamoke, another dad word, as Spence could be everywhere else at Parker, he was a total jock once he got on the court and playing field. That meant he wanted to win the game, and he knew that for their 8th grade team to win, Zach's outside shooting needed to be part of it. It didn't mean he ever gave Zach a total pass on the court. He'd still make his snarky comments when Zach messed up a play or missed an open shot, make sure he'd do it in a way that ensured Zach would hear the insult and Coach Piaworski would not. But for the most part, the place where Spence had always tortured Zach the least was on the basketball court. Until today. Today, Spence was messing with Zach's head every chance he got, to the point where Zach thought it was ridiculous to even think about this in terms of practice. Because when it came to this kind of chop busting, Spence didn't need practice. He was practically in the Hall of Fame. Today he was showing Zach up every chance he could in front of the team, picking his spots like a champ, always managing to do it when Coach P was looking the other way or talking to somebody else. As usual, Spence had his way of boring in on Zach at his lowest moments. And there had been plenty of those today because he was totally off his game. He wasn't off by a lot, but you didn't have to be off by a lot to look like a complete scrub in basketball. He was just a step slow on defense, which meant giving up too many easy baskets and running into one screen after another, ending up on the floor. He ran the wrong way twice on one of their basic defensive plays. A play designed to get him an open shot from the corner. Instead of Spence hitting him with a quick pass out to the post, he wound up throwing the ball out of bounds, right past the spot where Zach was supposed to be. After the second time, he glared Zach all the way into the East River for causing another turnover. Coach P had seen enough. He blew his whistle, told them to go get a drink of water, and then come back and see if they could run the play correctly. As Spence ran past Coach, he got into his ear and said, "Hey, is there any chance that if we fly the clue flag today, you might be able to salute it?" Zach didn't even think of responding. When you were playing like a scrub, you weren't allowed to do anything with trash talk except take it. Sometimes you even had to take it from the coach, who grinned at Zach as he said, "And this time, let's not have some of us going the wrong way down a one-way street." It never got better. Zach's head and body just weren't in the game today. And now, the blue team, the second unit, was beating Zach's red team, the first unit. The Reds were down by 2 points when Spence called a timeout with 1 minute to go in the fourth. David Epstein had just broken away from Zach for an easy layup. Spence knew it was riding on the last minute because everybody in the gym knew. The losing team had to run after the scrimmage was over. And not just run, but suicides. One of the killer basketball drills of all time. Everybody on the baseline, running 15 feet and touching the court, and sprinting back to the baseline, then up to half court, touching the floor, coming back, the same deal up to the other foul line, all the way back to the baseline. Finally to the other baseline, the full length of the court and back, with whatever legs and wind you had left. It was a bear of a drill any time, but much, much worse after you played the equivalent of a full game. In the huddle, Spence looked right at Zach and said, "You are not going to be the reason the rest of us have to run today. Your girlfriend would be doing more for us today than you are," Spence continued, red-faced. "Maybe we can get her out of play practice before we're all on the baseline and coach starts blowing his stupid whistle." "Leave her out of it," Zach said in a quiet voice, not even looking at him. "This one's on me." "How about you get on your man, boy," Spence said, "and look like an actual starter for at least 1 minute today while you're on the court." Zach knew he was right, though, and he did try as hard as he could during the last minute. He tried so hard that he forced a bullet pass into Spence that was too low and hard to handle. The pass bounced off his knee and right into the blue center's hands. He looked up and saw a wide-eyed David Epstein streaking toward the basket, completely uncovered. Last 2 points of the game. Coach blew his whistle and said, "Tragically, the Reds must go to the line now, because apparently our second unit is stronger than our starters." "Because of one guy," Spence said. "Hey," Coach said, "you know my philosophy. It's never one player that loses a game. It's never one play that loses a game. It's not one guy." Spence made a point of getting next to Zach. "Sorry about comparing you to a girl," he said under his breath, "because if you think about it, that's really, really insulting to girls." Coach blew his whistle, and the red team ran, and ran some more. When they were finished, all of them totally gassed, Coach told Zach and Spence to pick up the balls. Sweet, Zach thought. More alone time with my best friend in the world. Sarcasm. Spence picked up the balls, tossed them to Zach, who put them on the rolling rack. Neither one of them said anything until Zach said, "You take off. I'll put them in the storage room." He was nearly to the gym's double doors when the ball Spence Warren whipped at him hit him on the back of his head. Zach stumbled forward into the rack of balls, which went bouncing away from him. When he wheeled around, the back of his head stinging like he'd been slapped. Spence had his hand up, the way guys in tennis did after they got a fluke winner off the top of the net. "Sorry," Spence said, grinning at him. "Thought you were looking." 15 minutes later, Zach was looking for Spence. Ooh, looks like Zach is going to have to really try and get his temper under control. We'll figure out tomorrow what he does. I hope you're enjoying the story, and I'll see you then.